attention. How are you today?
I'm good. Howard, by the way, my mother was the one who named me one of 50 people most likely to change them, so it doesn't really count for that much.
It doesn't matter. We'll take it. Big fan of Mum's on the show. So let's cut to the chase. The difference between rituals, routines, and habits, please. So just lean in if you don't mind there a little bit.
Can I ask you a question about your own habits and routines? So in the morning,
yes.
Do you?
We've done this already, just so you know.
Okay, so
we've
tell
done
me.
This, the question you're going to ask us, we've done for an hour on the show.
Tell me your answers.
I'm the one. I'm not. I'm NFI. I'm no longer invited to the party because I brush my teeth in the shower.
That's disgusting.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So the original question was: do you brush your teeth and shower, or do you shower and brush your teeth? Because that is a ritualistic trait.
It sure is. So if you ask like an audience of people or whoever, what's weird is half of people say they brush then shower, and half say they shower then brush. I guess a tiny percent
do
it at the same time.
There's loads. Loads of listeners said, wait, that's the way to do it, my friend. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
It's very efficient, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But then if you say, well, you switch the order, basically. So, or anything you're doing in life that you like to do in a certain way, would you mind switching the order? And about half of people say, I don't care. Sure, why not? And half of people say, no, I don't. I feel weird. I don't want to do that. And I say, why? And they say, I don't know why. I just don't want to. And that's a little bit more like a ritual. Habit is just got to get stuff done, check it off the list. Ritual is my way of doing it, how I do it. That makes me feel certain emotions, and I'd really like to do it my way instead of a different way.
Now, from people equally as clever and mindful as you, we are often warned off attachment, attachment to things and to people and situations, to jobs. That sounds like attachment to me. So where does attachment end and rituals begin?
Yeah, we do see that we get stuck sometimes on our rituals, and they can actually get in the way of things. So you can imagine if what you like to do is brush and then shower and then brush and then shower for 5 hours, you're probably going to lose your job because you're so involved and attached to the ritual that you didn't end up doing the thing you wanted to do. So there is this space where rituals can be helpful to get us going, to get us ready. But then we actually have to get ready and then go do the thing that we wanted to do.
So how do we get it right? How do we use them to serve us best?
We're always thinking about they're often in the service of something else. So I'm doing my little morning routine in order to get ready for the day. Or I'm doing my nighttime little routine in order to feel sleepy so I can sleep. And so you do them for a certain amount of time in order to accomplish something else that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. As soon as the little amount of time on the ritual starts to extend, then we say, pull that back a little bit, because the whole point of it was to get to sleep or get to work or whatever it was you wanted to do.
Because you said routine there in amongst ritual. Was that a slip of the tongue, or did you mean to say that?
They are very similar, actually. And what's funny is one person's routine can be another person's ritual.
Oh, here we go.
So it gets very complicated. Even within couples, for example. If we ask couples, do you have a little cute ritual that you do? Some couples, one person will say, oh my God, we do. It's this wonderful little thing we do every night. And we ask the other person and they say, no. Because they didn't code it as a ritual at all.
And this is how some people know they're falling out of love.
We do see when couples disagree whether they have a ritual or not, couples are not nearly as happy as couples who both say, we do this cute little thing and we always make sure to do it.
Yeah, and in your book, you talk about the guy who makes a cup of tea for his wife every day. It's a ritual. He knows she loves it. He thinks she loves it. He hopes she loves it. She doesn't care about it.
Exactly. He says, I knew my marriage was over when I didn't feel like bringing my wife a cup of coffee, which I had done for years and I thought it was special. So he said, I knew it was over then. And then he said, the worst part was she didn't even notice.
Didn't even notice.
So you get this double, really, really painful.
So the rituals again, I mean, even noticing that one isn't when you thought it was, that is useful too. Would it help to say, is it right to say, that a ritual has joy within it?
I think emotion, especially. A lot of them have joy. So couples, cute little ones, definitely have joy within them because we're expressing. There's a couple where before they eat, every time they clink their silverware, and then they eat. Just this little cute, adorable action. Yeah. You feel the joy that they're experiencing there. But other rituals, for example, we use them to calm ourselves down. Other rituals we use them to amp ourselves up. So we kind of use them in our weddings and funerals are both rituals. Right. So we're using them in these really different contexts for these different emotions, but almost always they prompt some kind of emotion in us.
Because I didn't used to be very ritualistic, and now I am. After reading your book, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I knew I had morning rituals. We get asked about our rituals all the time. What's your morning ritual? It seems to work for you. What is it? Can you share it? Blah blah blah. The most asked question, but of many podcast guests, is what's your morning ritual? Isn't it? When people want to know about.
Completely,
it's especially
artists, entertainers. We really want to know what they're up to.
What makes them tick?
Exactly.
Okay, what have you learnt about that?
If you want to waste an entire day of your life, think of your favorite celebrity, athlete, whoever. Type in their name and then type the word ritual and search. And you're going to get the most wild, amazing stories. Not about every single athlete or celebrity, but most have these really, really elaborate rituals that they might do. My favorite personal one is Rafael Nadal before he serves. Anyone who likes tennis already knows his ritual. It's extremely elaborate. It's wiping and tugging and everything. One of his steps is he always picks his wedgie every time before he serves. And we let these people do it because we say, wow, they have to do, or Beyonce or whoever.
Part of their genius.
Exactly. They have to do this because what they're doing is so hard. So we say, go ahead and do it because you're going to be amazing. For ourselves, like I don't typically pick my wedgie before I teach because my students would say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So when it's really stressful, we bring rituals. And when it's just regular stressful, often we don't bring them as much.
And do you think it is part of their genius?
I do, actually. I mean, even Nadal, for example, says things like, I know I don't need to do it. You know, he would still be a pretty good tennis player if he didn't pick his wedgie. He's Rafael Nadal.
Yeah.
But he says, when I do it, I just feel better. I feel ready to go. So they give them kind of this mental space to feel like now I can serve at this insane velocity.
Yeah, and it's basically setting himself back to the same start point every single serve so that he knows where he is. He's starting from where he wants to be. And Serena does it, and she has a different ritual for first serve as opposed to second serve.
She does fewer bounces.
It's 5 and 3, is it? Or 5 and 2 or something like that.
Yeah, so she thinks on the first one I need more bounces. And on the second one, now that I'm in the flow, I only need 2 bounces.
So interesting, isn't it?
But we do see, if you think about when you've been anxious for anything, a meeting or whatever it might be, you do kind of bring rituals to bear a little bit. So we don't do them in public, but we'll go. It's incredibly common that people say, what I do is I go into the bathroom, I check to make sure that nobody's there, like I look under the stalls, and then I talk to myself in the mirror.
Yeah.
And I say, you can do this, you've got this.
Yes.
And what that does, as you said, is it brings us a little bit into the moment, a little bit we're more ready to go. Instead of spiraling out of control with anxiety, which we all know can happen to us, these rituals seem to center us enough so we feel ready to do what we need to do.
It's funny, isn't it? Because they can help us be in the moment, but also they can break the monotony of a situation to give us a perspective. So if at the 8 o'clock news on the hour, I will get up from this chair where I am and I will go and hang on that bar there for 30 seconds. Uh-huh. So I'm not necessarily, I am in the moment, but it gives me a break so I can go back to this, and not slump down, so treat the show we're on for 3.5 hours as 7 half-hour shows, as opposed to 1 3.5-hour chunk, which is helpful. So it's a ritual that takes me out of the moment I'm in, gives me perspective, I zoom out if you like, and then I zoom back in to carry on what I was doing, but with a fresh, if you like.
We do, and I think we do it every day on our everyday lives, and you can think about the entire year that we use them. So we can get into do the same thing every day, same train, same everything all the time, do the work, check off the checklist, things like that. And sometimes rituals are the things that help us bounce out of it. I mean, you can think about something like Christmas. Yeah. It does many things for us, but one thing it does is it just bounces us out of everyday life to do some celebration with family. So you can really think about or in marriages, you should celebrate your spouse every single day, but we get busy and things. But we have our anniversary. We have Valentine's Day. We have these punctuations in the year to remind us not to take it for granted and celebrate and see it from outside and see it fresh.
Yeah, and the joy aspects of rituals. You talk about couples there. You tell this lovely story in the book about a couple who celebrate doing the weekly shop and another couple who can't wait to get it out of the way. And why wouldn't you do it the first way?
Exactly. We see with date night too. Couples will default to we should have a date night because you're supposed to do that as a couple. So let's drag ourselves out every Friday night and make sure we have a date night. That's not going to do anything for your relationship. It's the couples who approach it as though it's an opportunity, a little ritual. They might go to the place they met every single Friday night. Or they might say, let's go to a new restaurant every single Friday night because we're foodies. But in any case, what they're doing is it's just food. You're going to eat dinner every night, right? That's just, you're going to do it. But what do you do around it to make it more meaningful and more joyful?
Yeah, okay. I mean, as many of books that are to do with us having a better life, the relationships chapter jumps out screaming at us. Can you tell the story of the two performance artists who met, please?
So these are two people, Ule and Marina Abramovich, were, if you know their work, they do these very elaborate rituals in their artwork just in general. But because they are who they are, they wanted to do them in their relationships as well. So the most funny one that they do is not actually when they get together, but when they break up, they decide, let's not just, shake hands, you take your records, I take my records, and we move on. They decided they would walk the Great Wall of China, starting at opposite ends, and only when they met in the middle was the relationship over. Now, most of us don't have the time or space to do something like that, but we do, in fact, see couples being creative about not just shake hands and walk away. I mean, you've been with someone for 10 years, 20 years. We don't actually have a ceremony for ending it. We have ceremonies for starting marriages, for sure. We don't have a ceremony to end it. And we see people actually in the world, including this extreme example, we come up with them ourselves sometimes, even if there's not one there for us, in order to help us through.
Yeah, and another ritual that you speak to do with that is the divorce adversary, which is if you were in love with someone and are no longer in love with them, but you do love them, and you've given each other the gift of freedom to go and have another adventure in life as far as a partner is concerned, why not celebrate it?
Exactly. There's two things that people have come up with. One is this divorce adversary,
which is a great word.
Exactly. You celebrate with your partner, your former partner, every year.
Yeah.
But the other one that people do actually is after you've gotten on the anniversary of your divorce, you get together, not with your ex, but with your friends to celebrate the fact that you're no longer with that person.
Yeah.
There's a very funny couple that got divorced and then got remarried years and years later. In their wedding invitations, what it said is, we're so sorry, but the divorce didn't work out.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? I thought you were going to say that about the performance artists as well, because they sort of came together via a ritual that they shared but didn't know they shared, to do with their diaries and their birthdays.
Yes, they kept these little diaries together and they showed them to each other, and they often had the exact same things written in them. So they really felt this karma,
the rest of the world
kind
didn't
of
exist.
Moment. Exactly. We're in our own little ritual together. And even this couple that clinks their silverware that I mentioned, it's not as elaborate as them, but most couples don't clink their silverware before they eat. This couple does it. It's theirs. They do it every day. They've done it for years. They're going to do it for years. It's very special and important to them that they keep doing it.
So this compartmentalization of your life, and then there's rituals within that, which may sort of be invisible doors to the next hour or the next half hour. That's how I sort of use them. And as my life became busier, I like to have a chaotic life. I did like it. Cosmos is one thing, chaos is another thing. And I like being in the latter. Then I had no choice but to be in the form, but I didn't realize it. I was the frog in the pan. I was being slowly boiled into conforming to the cosmos. Because if I then wanted to carry on being spontaneous, I had to have some order within which to be spontaneous. You seem to have had a very similar revelation. Is that correct?
For sure. I think the biggest shock to, our lives, but also our rituals, is having a kid.
Yes!
Because you go to the hospital. I don't know if anybody's ever had a kid, but the way that it works is you go to the hospital and then they say after a little while, go home with the human and take care of them for 20 or 30 years. I mean, it's this insane thing that we have to do.
It's such a bad deal.
It's terrible. It's incredibly stressful. It's incredible. What am I supposed to do? How are we going to do this? And for me too. And what I found was, the biggest thing is the sleep. Is the baby sleeping? Are you sleeping? Is anybody sleeping in the household?
Does sleep exist anymore?
Exactly. I mean, how do we get some sleep in this place? And what parents do and what we do ourselves is develop rituals. Now, we didn't call it that in our minds. We weren't thinking, let's sit down and develop a ritual right now. But after a few weeks and months, what we realized was we had this, let's sing this song, and then we'll read this book, and then we'll do bath, and then we'll do swaddle, and then this song, and then this, and then these two stuffies. I mean, it's an incredibly elaborate ritual that took forever. If we messed it up, we would start it over because we didn't want to jinx the baby's sleep either.
Yeah.
It happened to me. In other words, in the face of all of this chaos in my life, I'm a scientist. I'm not supposed to go for this kind of ritual stuff. I naturally also went straight for ritual to try to help.
But scientists like order, don't they? Because they say some certain sort of stream of thinking in science says if it can't be measured, it doesn't exist. Clearly, it can exist because love exists and hope exists and all that. But you know what I mean. So that's quite not hypocritical, but it's quite counterintuitive.
I would have been extremely skeptical that rituals could. Even the word ritual feels like, people in robes with candles chanting or something like this.
You talk about that, don't you?
Exactly. And so I wouldn't have thought what a role they play in my everyday life as well.
All right. How do rituals help with grief?
This is, I think, a really important place where rituals do a lot for us. And I think it's in ways that I didn't quite realize until we started studying it. Because if we ask people, think of somebody you lost, what happened afterward or what did you do? People will say, well, there was a funeral or whatever it was in their faith. And, those things last 1 day or 3 days or 5 or 30, depending on your faith and culture. But at some point that ends. But that's not how grief works. I mean, it would be lovely if you could go to a funeral and then right after the funeral was over, your grief would be gone.
Yeah.
That is just unfortunately not how we're built. And so what do we do in the weeks and months and years as we're still grieving? And we found that what people would do is, and often they would say, I've never told anybody this, but what I did was, so one woman, for example, every morning on her way to work would listen to her mom's favorite song for months and months. Then she stopped, but it was part of her grief. And this other woman said, very simply, I washed his car every weekend the way he used to do.
Yeah.
You know everything that's happening right there in that little tiny sentence. And again, you could say, why would you wash a car that you're not going to drive? If you're a human at all, you completely understand why she's washing this car.
If you're a scientist, you can't measure it. It doesn't exist. Oh, yes, it does, Mr. and Mrs. Scientists. No question about that. Okay, so from the sublime to not ridiculous, but humorous. If you are in charge of a sports team and you know that the other team is filled with people who have rituals to help them achieve their best peak performance, you can mess with that, can't you? Like changing the clock on the scoreboard. Tell us about that.
We do see teams messing with both the whole team and individual players, where if you know that this player has something with, for example, the number 7. There was a baseball player in the United States, Wade Boggs, who had everything he did in his life was a ritual, but he loved the number 7. Like he would eat at 6:17 and then he would stretch at 7:17. He had all these things with 7s. And the managers of other teams would ask the scoreboard operator to skip on the clock.
Skip all the
7:17 so that this guy would be totally off his game. And I love the idea of just a little tweak. It shouldn't matter whether the clock says 7:17 or not, but when it's for you, part of your ritual, it does, in fact, really throw you off.
So I honestly, rituals make me feel really comfortable, really safe and secure. And we know that from the basic 6 human needs that variety is number 1, but only if security is number 2. If security is number 6, then variety goes out the window, I love my doorways of ritual. So getting up, shower, toothbrush, shower. Sorry about that. Apologise. Downstairs, I have a ritual the night before which sets my drinks out for the morning. So I loan some of my today self out to help my tomorrow self. All that kind of good stuff. Yep. I know exactly where I'm going on the motorway. I know the service station where I get my cup of coffee. It helps because if I mess one of them, it's a red flag to my mindset as well. If I get one wrong, I go, oh, what is that telling me? Do you recognise that from your research?
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting things about rituals is they kind of have a risk and reward profile to them. So it isn't just if you add 1 million rituals, you're going to be happy for the rest of your life. That's not how it works. But what they do is they can bring us calm or joy. But if they get disrupted or interrupted, they also can throw us off. And so we have this funny thing with them where it is nice to have them and they do a lot of good things for us. But if you're a brush your teeth and then shower person and your kid runs in and steals the toothpaste, well, now you're going to feel off all day. And so they help us, but also we need to do them sometimes or we don't get the benefit. Yeah. And then we can be worse off than if we didn't have one at all.
It's funny, isn't it? Because if I miss something or something goes wrong or there's an accident on the motorway into work and I'm back and I'm behind, I might have to miss, say, for example, the coffee on the A40. But if I can get to the next bit, my next ritual in time, I can reset everything again. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it really is helpful, isn't it? You can be too reliable on them, I suppose. You can become addicted to your rituals. When do they not overstay their welcome? When are there too many of them for our own good, do you think?
Yeah, we can see, for example, in something with obsessive compulsive disorder, which many people are familiar with. This is a case where, in a sense, our rituals have gotten control of us. So we usually use our rituals in order to do something else. I'll use this ritual in order to calm down so I can go play or whatever it might be. What happens with obsessive compulsive disorder is I forget the link between the ritual and what I was trying to do. I'm doing my little thing in the morning to leave the house. And instead what happens is I'm going to check the lock to make sure that the door is locked before I go to work. but I'm just going to keep checking the lock and checking the lock. And then I'm not going to go to work. And so when we see rituals, we can literally just measure, is it interfering with your other goals in life?
Yeah.
And as soon as they start to bump into the things you really wanted to get done, that's when we say, you might have gone too far with these. Maybe you need to pull them back.
Yeah, got it. Vassos.
I loved the Knorr cake mix analogy. I just loved how was it Knorr or whoever it was who made a cake? Well, you tell us about the cake mix. The cake mix that just didn't work, completely bombed, and then they brought in some scientists, and then they realized why.
Too clever for its own good.
Exactly. So in the 1950s, all over the world, instant cake mixes, instant eggs, instant everything became very popular. And for a good reason, which is that we're all very busy and we want to make things very quickly. But with cake mix in particular, this company found that women were not, at the time it was mainly women who were housewives who were making cakes and baking, weren't using the instant cake mixes. And the question was why? They're really easy. It tasted fine. There's nothing wrong with the cake. So they hired these scientists to come in and say, what's going on? Why won't women use these cake mixes? And what they basically said was, I don't feel like I'm baking. I don't, and when I bake, I feel like I'm taking care of my family. And this is too easy.
It's a cheat.
So what they did was they just added back the egg. That was the only thing. They said, still everything's in the box. Don't worry about it. However, you have to crack one egg and put it in and stir it in together. And that makes people feel like they're baking and taking care of their family.
And they have agency over it.
Completely. And we feel invested in it, and we feel that we owned it and we made it. And that really matters to us.
It's so funny you talk about that, because you talked about washing the car before. So obviously, if one of my kids and I wash a car with buckets, right? You got your dirty water, you got your clean water, you got your hot water, you got your cold water. That is page one. We are washing the car. Right? If we go to an automatic car wash, we are not washing the car, but we're having fun in the car, right? Singing along to the windscreen wipers, going to the right rhythm to Losing My Religion or whatever like that. But I think the equivalent of the ready mix and the breaking of the egg is the hand car wash next to the automatic car wash, which is somewhere comfortably in between the jet wash and the foam brush, That's the equivalent of that, I think.
Completely. One of my favorite things to do when I teach, executives at the Harvard Business School, very accomplished people, as you can imagine, I'll give them Lego sets meant for small children. 6-piece Lego sets that you put together to make a frog, something like that. And they say, why do we have to, we're kind of important people. Why is this guy making us build Legos? So they put them together. And then I say, okay, well, we're done with that. Can you please take them back apart and hand them in? And I mean, you've never seen people look more stressed in their lives. They'll almost swoop the frog on a hug and say, you can't take my frog away from me. I made this frog. So even with something as silly and small as little, because if I said, do you want a Lego frog?
Yeah.
No.
You can take my heart, you can take my mind, you can take my village and children, but you cannot take my Lego frog.
It's everything to me.
It's the mug, isn't it? You say that if you have a mug and you would pay more money for your own mug than you would for a brand new perfect replica of your mug.
A mug you've made yourself.
Yeah, or even not.
Amazing. I mean, when we get things, we really value them. And when we make them, we value them even more than that, which is why many people have terrible artwork that they've made in their homes.
On your desk.
I have a terrible sculpture that I made on my desk.
Yeah.
I know that it's not that good, but it's mine.
Do you ever pretend it's your child's?
A bonnet.
Right. Michael Norton, this book, Professor Michael Norton, The Ritual Effect, The Transformative Power of Our Everyday Actions. It is a fascinating book. He opens with legends, Charles Dickens and Maya Angelou and their rituals. And you end with that, but interspersed with modern day rituals. It's a fantastic book. Also, your TED Talk, How to Buy Happiness. How many millions of people have watched that now?
At least 3 people have.
Oh, come on. It's literally, I think it's in the hundreds of millions, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's awesome, mate. An inventory often helps here. Let's end with that. How can people have a look to see if what they're doing are rituals, routines, or habits? What's the difference? And where can they go from there?
Yeah, I do think the message is not add 100 rituals starting tomorrow, because we just, meditate for 5 hours a day is great advice, except who has 5 hours a day? So I think the first thing to do with rituals is literally just look to see where they're happening in your own life. And often just hearing a conversation like we've been having, during the conversation, you say, you know what, I didn't realize it, but my spouse and I do this, or my family does this at the holidays. You start to see them already happening, and taking that kind of inventory is an amazing first step to just say, wow, these are really happening everywhere. Let me notice them a little bit more, own them a little bit more. And also when you do them often, you kind of get a little chuckle and you laugh at yourself now because you realize what you're doing and who you are.
And if people want to, because they like the sound of it, they do work up to a point, up to where you're in control of them and they're not in control of you. If people do want to instigate more rituals, do you have a hack for that as well?
I think of a moment in your life that is a challenge for you and think about what you might add. So if you're feeling like with your spouse things are drifting a little bit, think there what you might do. Or if you're really nervous before meetings at work, think there what you might do. So think about these moments where rituals might help.
I like the clenched fist on the chest. Can you give us that one before you go?
Yeah, you can think about all sorts of things that you can do with your body. One of the things we see actually is that you have in your mind and in your physical body, combining both of them seems to be most effective.
All right, so it's tap the chest, arms above the head on the inhale, bring them down on the exhale, tap them again 3 times.
If this works for you, try it and see if it works for you. If not, try more taps or fewer taps or
and
more
not
stretches.
if you're driving. Great to meet you, man. Have a great tour.
Thanks so much.
Fantastic book. Another one, The Ritual Effect, The Transformative Power of Our Everyday Actions. It's out now by Professor Michael Norton.
Virgin Radio.